in our schools is a lack of motivation of kids, especially older kids. Some of that is due to the high stakes test, I think, and that's why I want you guys to be real versed on it, because I think that if all you do is test prep, or if that's even, 55% of what you do in your class is test prep, by the time they're in third, fourth, and fifth, motivation just continues to drop. And so while they might come into school, they're going to tell you that their favorite time is recess or PE or those sorts of things. And we want them to love those things too. But we also want them to be involved and engaged, and not only 5 kids in your class being real participatory, but that all of them can see worth in what you're doing. So I think it's almost, let's call it a pandemic. Classrooms I go into often, the biggest issue is not what the teacher is teaching. She's got it down. She's doing her lesson cycle. She's got her anticipatory set. She's got guided practice and all this stuff. And the kids, if they are good, it means that they're quiet. And I think that a lot of you are going to end up in situations where you're confronted with some of that, because the kids have been in situations where they're confronted with some of that. And the best thing to do is to actually work on motivation, the affect, with an A. So today we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about the specifics of that as we take a little time to think about specific activities that you can use, whether you're interviewing or student teaching or doing a couple of lessons during your field-based placements, that you can grab onto the strategy that has high motivation, high interest, grab that strategy and actually be able to use it in whatever content area that you're teaching. Now, the strategy, I would say almost all of you, if I asked you right now to come up with a strategy, a lot of you will choose a KWL. I read it on lesson plans all the time. KWL, it's not that it's a bad strategy. It's just one of the last ones that kids find interesting. Let me tell you why. First of all, if you bring your KWL chart and you're getting ready to start with the kids a new lesson, a new unit, and units are awesome. That's how I would love for you to teach. I'd love for you to have projects and project-based learning and games, because we learn that way. KWL chart asks the kids what they know before they begin. Now, that's interesting. We do want to know a little bit about what they know, but we have to be really careful, because if you have kids who know a lot about a topic area, it's not a topic area you need to be teaching. So we want to teach inside of something that's just a little bit harder than what the kids know. So if we're asking them what they know, who are we asking that for? Well, we're asking it for us. So it shouldn't really be something that's done in front of the class. It's not something you need to take class time on. It might be homework. You might have them come in with some ideas just to get started. But spending a lot of time on a KWL is literally a waste of time for most of the kids who just sit there. Now, coming up with ideas about what they want to know. If you're picking topics that they're interested in, totally a great part. Asking, what do you want to know about this? We're going to talk about sharks. What do you want to know? And they're going to tell you all sorts of cool stuff, because what they want to know is, do sharks eat people? Why can we not keep sharks at SeaWorld? Things like that. Why are there not great whites at SeaWorld? Those are the kind of really cool questions that kids have asked that even as an adult, I don't know that I even thought about. Why don't we have sharks, big sharks at SeaWorld? That would be, I'd go want to see a big shark at SeaWorld, but they're not there. So why? And I think if we start asking kids what they want to know, and we're making sure that we're catching onto those things and utilizing those things, we'll end up with really better behavior than other classrooms that are just near us. I can tell you I've taught across a myriad. I call myself the I-35 teacher because I've taught at all these different schools from Dallas all the way down to San Antonio on I-35, right? So I've seen kids from all of this part of Texas, right? Urban kids, some more rural kids, mixing of kids, languages and colors. And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter what color, what language, what gender. It does not matter if they're in between or about and stuff. They have questions, and they don't think school is a place to answer them. And if it isn't, why are we having them do it? I mean, we're worried that they're not going to pass the test when they come in now, right? Everybody's worried about it. Teachers are worried about it. And I can tell you, you know now. You actually know what's going to happen. I showed you the chart. When big things happen in our world, we see statistically significant dips. On the National Reading Panel, that was the green line across the top, we see small dips. Remember we talked about when we started including people of color, when we started including people with disabilities. We saw this tiny little dips. Now it remains very similar, but tiny little dips. Now in Texas, it's different. It's going to be different again. So when the kids come in and take that test, their STAR test, which we paid, millions of dollars actually for, which is why we're giving it, because we know what's going to happen. What's going to happen when we give that test? You know.
Scores would drop dramatically.
Oh yeah. They're gonna plummet. They're gonna plummet, and part of that is they've been working at home, and the other part is we know that when kids aren't at school, they tend to look like they have huge deficits, and part of that is because kids are learning different things. It's not that they were sitting at home in a dark box. It's that they're learning different things. Kids who come from rural spaces and are often tested test lower than kids who are in urban spaces. Part of that is because the kinds of things that they're learning when they're working on the farm, when they're figuring out how to feed animals, when they are painting houses and barns, and is different. Kids that come from urban spaces in other countries, they come in with different knowledge. It's not the knowledge that we've decided is important. And I would say, I don't think it's any less important. I just think we didn't choose their thing. The big powers that be. So just as a quick sort of side, that's why today and especially next week, I would say are some of the most important things I would like for you to take away. I mean, just important in terms of for yourself and your own motivation. In our class of about 20 or so that are here today, we'll end up only having 5 teachers out of this 20 that will maintain being in the teaching field in 5 years. 5. And I'll tell you why. It's not because you don't like it. It's because you end up not liking it. You end up feeling like everything else is a problem. It's not really the kids. You love them and you care about them, but it's all the other stuff. So I would argue if that's going to end up happening anyway, why would you not be doing the things that you know make a difference and that make you happy? Because when you're happy and interested and trying to figure out why sharks aren't at SeaWorld, you're inviting kids to come on a journey with you. And can you teach summarization when you're talking about sea life? And be teaching all about summary and how you do it and what it is. And we're going to summarize sharks. A book on sharks. Can we summarize that? Well, can you? Okay, could you summarize a book on sharks? Jessica says, yeah, I agree with you. You can use these skills in any area. That's why they're powerful. They're powerful skills, summarizing and inferring and main idea. Those are powerful skills, but you don't have to do it in text that's crappy, that doesn't connect with your kids. You can do it in really cool stuff. You don't have to wait for a holiday to do something. You can actually come up with things, even though the goal is summary, which is always hard for every grade level. Summary and inferencing, they struggle. You can do that in any area. So be sure that you are paying attention to what strategies fit for you that you think you could do a good job at, and then they make sense for you. And then trying to imagine what text, what topics make sense for your kids and for you. Because the only way that you're going to love this job is if you're doing things that you believe in and that you know. You didn't come in here, you did not come into the College of Ed thinking, you know what I want to do? Packets of worksheets. That's the plan. That'll be an awesome job. I'll get summers off, and I can just give packets. Nobody, and even if you did, you will hate it. You will hate it. You'll feel like every day, just this little pieces of you like pulling your shoulders down because you're upset and overwhelmed and you don't know why. And I'll tell you why. Because you're not connected to what you're doing either. When you love it, kids know it. And they start to love it too. Even things like plants. We did plants and the life cycle of plants, something they need to know about, and temperature. But when you start going, you know what? I wonder if the temperature in your mouth is the same as the temperature under your arm. What kind of temperature do dogs have? Why is their heart rate higher? And those are some questions kids have. Why do you take temperatures sometimes under their arms and now we're taking them on their heads? That's literally a question a kid asked me. Can you take it? If we could take it on our heads, why are we taking it in our mouth? Is one better than the other? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I know the one on your head's faster, so that might be better. And the little girl was like, but you should know, miss. Yeah, but I don't. And so we got to look that up. We got to figure it out. Like, I know that we have resources to do it, to figure it out, but I have no idea why it is that one time, at the stores, at Bath and Body Works, they're taking it on your forehead. And then when you go to the doctor, they're sticking it under your tongue. And I'm like, is one better? Is one, I don't know. So anyway, I think when we start saying that we don't know, but we do know how to summarize, how to infer, we know what main idea is, we know all the different types of emotions that characters can have and that we have and that we should be able to talk about. And we can actually ask kids, what do you think would motivate you? What do you think? So I'm having trouble getting your homework, and I get why. I know home's really tough, but I open my class in the morning and I just want to know, what can I do to help to make that happen? What's going to motivate you? I've had kids say things like, I'd like to write in colored pens. And then you're going to close your face? Yeah. Alrighty, colored pens it is. I've had kids say that they want candy. Okay, so let's see how it goes. Let's figure out, if you have a good day, we can talk about it. Let's see. Let's see. Most of the time, those token reinforcers don't last very long, right? So, it only works a little bit. We want intrinsic motivation. That intrinsic motivation only comes when topics are cool. Things are interesting. We're not motivated to do things unless we find that they're helping us in some way, that we're finding what we do is interesting. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to kind of jump into this first No, I think I'll share the actual screen. I like sharing my screen because then I can actually know what you're looking at, and sometimes I can't tell. Okay, so I'm going to throw you into rooms. You're going to do kind of a little bit of talking today with each other, kind of some figuring out to get us ready for what we're going to talk about next week, which is flow and how it is that we can get ourselves and our kids into the content. I've seen teachers be really into content as well, and yet at the same time, they aren't noticing that the kids are not into the content, right? So the kids are doing nothing. They're quiet, but they're not necessarily doing anything, and the teacher's doing all the work. The problem is you can have a great lesson, but if you're doing all the work, guess who's not doing the work? The kids are. The kids are sitting there. The kids need to be doing the work, which is why I think that when we start talking about older learners, and older, when we're talking at least in these next couple days, are specific for, say, grades 3rd grade and above, all the way through high school. These strategies work all the way through high school. Your book, you read about older kids being middle school and high school, but I'll tell you that the same kinds of teaching that we would actually want to see in our middle and high school is something that you are, more likely to see in elementary. We are more likely to be doing small groups, working on topics, figuring out projects, than you are unless you're in an AP course. And even then, it's very teacher-driven in our high schools. Okay, so first of all, I see a lot of lesson plans and people that used to come into my classes often with lesson plans that were done with like a 5E model or a Madeline Hunter. You guys are the kings and queens of that kind of lesson plan because we've made you do it in all these classes. I have a feeling that at some point you realized, I'm not going to be able to do that on all subject areas when I'm teaching 8 different subjects. And I'm doing them every day of the week. There's no way I'm doing Madeline Hunter for all of that. And it seems almost like silly that I'm being made to do it. Now, I know why. I can tell you why. They're making you do it because they know that if you thought through a lesson with that depth and complexity, like on a 5E or on a Madeline Hunter, or there are other options as well, but those really big ones, right? When you've thought through it, the idea is that you then sort of internalize some of that. And with the internalizing of it, that's where you're really going to make a difference when you're out there teaching on your own. I get it. I understand it. Yet I think I did that back when I was in school, and that was in the 90s. That's kind of problematic that we haven't changed our planning structure for kids in 2020. Like, I've been teaching a really long time, and I don't do that anymore because I know, it wasn't so helpful for me as a teacher when I first got out there. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like overwhelming. Lesson planning is overwhelming. Not because I thought I was doing 5E, just because it's overwhelming. So what if there was a way for you to grab onto the main parts of a lesson that you need, that sort of circular motion that keeps you going, but with something you could write in a little square about this big, right? Like, here's what we're going to do. Here's the page. Here's the content. Now, what am I going to actually want the kids to do? So that it was more usable. This process, it is contained in your book. We're looking at chapter 8, but I've sort of amended it a little bit. Now I'm going to talk you through it, what it means. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to throw you into some groups, and I want to see if you can figure out why this might be the process for a little bit older kids, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and on up, those of you that are doing all level or middle and high, which is a couple of you, just so you know. There are a couple of you. So why would this be the process, and why is it different than 5E or Madeline Hunter or those big, long lesson plans? So this process looks like this. Some sort of anticipation building, right? So this is not like a K to BL, like, what do you want to know? Although it could be. What it's not is a big question that you've come up with. What it's going to be is the kids are coming up with something. So the anticipation is getting yourself and them interested in whatever you're going to talk about. And it can be anything, because when you start being interested in it, they do too. But some sort of anticipatory set, it's sometimes called. Anticipation. We're going to build anticipation for it. Then we're going to make sure that kids have the knowledge just to begin the task. Like, what are some main things that if they are successful in our shark lesson and in our shark unit or our under the sea unit, what do they need to know to begin with? Like, what are some of the words, some of the ideas, some of the thought processes about it? What do they need to know? Building knowledge contains 2 parts. Okay, and you've heard of these parts before. It's containing background knowledge and prior knowledge. Now, a lot of times I've seen professors especially, but teachers use that interchangeably, that they mean the same thing, background knowledge and prior knowledge. They don't, okay? Any educational psychologist will tell you, no, actually, prior knowledge is what the kid has already assimilated and accommodated. Like, they've already taken it in, they get it, they understand it, and then they're able to share it, right? So it's that assimilation and accommodation that you learned, in your early literacy classes or in your early childhood development classes about how kids learn, okay? All of us learn that way. We figure out what it is that's happening, we code it with what we know, and then it becomes prior knowledge when we share it. That being said, all you as a teacher can do is provide background knowledge. So you provide background knowledge with the hopes that they internalize it, and then they're able to share it or write about it or talk about it or just know it. And then that's the prior knowledge. So that next time when you see them the next day, you don't have to go over what you did before because they've already got the background knowledge for at least where they are right now. And then you move forward. That you assume and that you work with what's now become prior knowledge. Like, so you'll say, remember yesterday when we said, one of our questions was, why don't we have great white sharks at SeaWorld? That was one of your questions. Remember that? All right. So prior knowledge is what the kid has. If they are knowing something about a topic, so the only thing that you as a teacher can do is to provide background knowledge. So we're going to call that building knowledge. So we're going to meet there somewhere in the middle where you're building knowledge for the kids, helping to set it up for them with what they already know. And then this piece right here, which is not showing, there's one more, and it's called task. I took it out of the last class because, rolling. This word should say task. Should say task. So that means whatever it is that they're going to do for that day. Maybe they're just researching that question. Maybe it's a summary activity. Maybe it's a writing. Maybe it's, I don't know, some sort of mathematics about how big a shark is and how many gallons of water. Who knows? Some sort of task that's related to your TEKS. It might be a task that's going to be related to your TEKS. It's a setup, but something for them to do. And then the last part is some sort of reflection or consolidation. The goal is after they've done all of these things, you've helped build, they've built, now you're at the end of the task for the day, okay? You're saying, okay, so what did you learn? What's something you learned today? Turn to your partner and tell them. I used to love exit tickets for the older kids, so when they left to go to like departmentalization, so they might go in 5th grade to another teacher, another class or whatever, I would always ask them, write down on your note card, turn in your note card, what'd you learn today? What's something new? What's an idea you had, a question you still have? And I didn't have to do all the worksheets or grades like that. There were grades, but if you'll notice, out in the schools, there's usually, in the course of a 3-week progress report, you'll be asked to do about 6 grades. 3 weeks, 6 grades. When you think about that, that's not very much, guys. That means that you can really be particular about what you spend your time grading. You already know which kids are low, which kids are high, which kids are somewhere in the middle. You know. You don't need the test to tell you that. You know. And if you don't know, you're now doing informal reading inventories to find out where they're struggling. But you know. So if we set up our lesson plan with what are we going to do to start it, what is it that they probably know or we need them to know, what is it that the task is, and then what are we going to have them do at the end to just kind of be in that day. And now when they return the next day, you might still be doing sharks. I would hope you would, because not all the questions will be answered yet. Kids will come up with questions all the time. Put them on my question board. Go put them up there. And so if we think about it, sort of this recursive circle constantly. Anticipation, getting them ready for the day, 1 minute sponge, something really interesting, a fun fact, a National Geographic picture. You ever walked into a classroom with a giant picture of a shark on the projector? I'll tell you what happens. Kids are like, oh, what are we doing, miss? What are we doing, miss? What are we doing? Hey, mister, what's up? Like, that's what it sounds like when I'm sitting at the back of a classroom with just a picture on the computer, or on the, projected of a shark. I saw it happen. Bam. I've also seen amazing lessons that begin much like you would, any lesson. Like, tell me what you know about. One of my favorite lessons, and before we move into this, one of my favorite lessons, I don't think I told in the other classes this, best lesson I ever saw was done by this woman at A&M. She was tiny, 4 foot something, because I'm pretty short. I know I look so tall in the video. I'm pretty short. I'm like 5'2", so definitely shorter than I was. Tiny and short and just little. And she was at Thomas Jefferson High School. And so I went to go see her. She was teaching a regular English class, right? And so I go to watch her. I'm her facilitator. I go to watch her do a lesson. Never met her before. Well, we talked on the phone, I've seen her lesson plan, whatever. Well, I go in there, and she is going to be introducing Romeo and Juliet to some, regular old high school English kids, freshman English. They come in, they don't have a pencil, they didn't carry a piece of paper, they sit down on a chair, and they're just, talking and messing around, and this little tiny woman, comes to the front, and I'm sitting there going, this is going to be bad. This is bad. This is just not good. And she turns around, and she goes, how do you know if you love someone? And the kids are like, right? So this one kid at the back yells, raises his hands, miss, if you want to them. Starts with an F, ends with an uck, right? She goes, she did not miss a beat, which this high school did not miss a beat. She goes, yeah, that might be true. And she goes to the board and she writes sex. That might be true, but I know you don't want to do that with your mama. So how do you know you love someone? Oh, literally the class was like, oh, and then kind of sat there and they were like, turn to your partner. How do you know you love someone? So they kind of talk, and then she says, does a first grader, a little kid, I don't know, 3rd grade, say that he loves his teddy bear the same as he loves his mom? And the kids are like, no, miss. Well, how do you know? He says he loves them. Well, no, you love your mom more than anything. Yeah, but does the little kid? Well, yeah. Does the kid love his mom the same as he loves his dad? Well, no, miss. This grand conversation starts happening, right? It's not about her saying yes or no. It's about what the kids are saying. And it could have gone so bad. I thought, oh my God, there's the kid in the back raising his hand. Oh my, this is in trouble. She didn't miss a beat because she knew what the goal was to talk about how do we know if we love someone? Because in Romeo and Juliet, this is how she ended the lesson. She goes, listen, guys, so here's the thing. I don't know the answers to all of it, but I can tell you this. We're going to read a book that's all about what would you do for the person that you love. For your girlfriend, what would you do? For your boyfriend, what would you do? For your parents and your name, what would you do? How far are you willing to go? Silence. A class of 30 kids, completely silent. She says, all right, so I'll see you next week. I was like, whoa, okay. So I've got to reflect with her, right? So I'm thinking this is the best lesson that I've ever seen. I've never seen high school regular old kiddos coming in like that, all riled up. A teacher that I could never have done that lesson like she did it. It was brilliant. So I've got to do a couple other observations. I'm going to meet her back in the library to talk about it. So I go walking through the cafeteria, right? The kids are in the cafeteria, I kid you not, talking about Miss Ramirez's lesson. They're like, whoa, are you going to Ms. Ramirez's class? Because she's going to ask you if you love your mama the same way you love your girlfriend. She's going to say, hey, well, what does it mean? Would you die for the person? They are talking about it at lunch, sitting there going, I don't know, I might die for some French fries. And they're like, no, you wouldn't. Like, she means, like, really, would you die for someone? Like, who would you die for, man? And, like, that conversation to be living 2 hours later in the cafeteria, I was like, whoa. So I go to meet with the student teacher, right? She's student teaching. This is her first time in the classroom, really, all this. I go to meet with her, and I sit down and say, so tell me how you think it went. Now, you just heard how I think it went. I didn't tell her any of that. I just said, tell me how you think it went. She goes, I'm so sorry. You know, Hector at the back, he's always a problem. He always calls out stuff, and I didn't know what to do. Do I take him outside? And then I talk to him. Do I give him detention? Like, what do I do? And she was crying, started crying because she was so upset that she felt like the kids were out of control. They were never off topic. None of them. Even when they were like, whoa, you didn't, you know, that sort of stuff. I said, wait a second. Tell me this again. What are you worried about? She goes, I think you're going to get all over me because it was just kind of loud and Hector and I didn't know what to do. I was like, listen, okay. I said, this is the best lesson that I've ever seen. And she just kind of looked, she's crying, right? And I said, I want you to actually think about it. If you'd seen that happen with somebody else teaching it, what would you say? She says, well, I mean, I think the kids were interested. Yeah, you think? I was like, they were talking at lunch about your class. Like, do you have little Ramirez? That's what they called her. Do you have little Ramirez? I was like, anyway, so it was so difficult because the very thing that I thought was the best thing, she was so worried about. So don't be worried. Don't think that when your facilitator comes out to your classroom that because you don't have a Madeline Hunter lesson plan and you're not, that the class is talking and they're in small groups or they're working on a guided reading lesson or you've got some computer up and you're doing some real great question in anticipation of something. Your facilitators are going to know good teaching when they see it. They're going to know it. And don't ever be afraid to try something. They're not going to fail you. I know all of them. They are not going to fail you. They are not going to say this is awful. This is your time to try it out. So try to be yourself. You're scared. You're nervous. We all are. I still get nervous sometimes. But yet, you know, you do what you got to do. I stand in front of adults all the time and teach lessons. And I've stood in front of kids. And I'll tell you, kids can be a harsher audience if you're not doing something that they're interested in. You guys just start doing email. Doesn't hurt anybody, at least. I want you guys to be engaged, and I want you to see good teaching when you see it. I want you to know. Okay, so as I start with that, so the process that I'm showing you here is a little bit different. So what I'd like for you to do in your groups as I send you into them is to answer the question, why might this process in specific be a great idea to use for older learners? Okay, why might this be a really good process to use with older learners? So I'm going to throw you into some groups, and then I will put the question again over to the side, and then you can kind of talk. You're going to have just about 2 minutes or something to talk about it. This is the start of the extra credit for today, for coming today, which is, so you're going to need a piece of paper. I know, old school, got to have a piece of paper, or I guess you could open a document on your computer if you wanted to. And so this is the first thing that you're going to write about. Just write a couple sentences down showing that you were participating in your group. Make sure you have a couple different ideas, and then be ready to come back and talk. All right, I think this is about right. I might shuffle a couple of you in just a second. So I'm going to put you into groups with just a couple people and then chat about it, and then we'll bring you back to session, okay? Welcome back. So, what are a couple of things that you talked about? What do you think? Do you agree? You can even disagree. That's fine. Do you agree? What do you like, not like? How do you think it fits with what you already know about lesson planning? What do y'all think? Oh, and if I look over, I'm just kind of taking note of participation because I know you're here now. I'd like to see who's participating. All right, what you got?
I feel like it follows the same guidelines as a regular lesson plan, and it pretty much covers the main basis of a lesson plan as well.
Mm-hmm.
It just simplifies it instead of going through the details.
Yeah, absolutely. Who else? What else? What do you think? What else did your group talk about?
So me and my group went into pretty deep depth about it because I started off by saying that like older students' attention and interest needs to be captured early on, especially like in high school and older students, because like once you get to your period or whatever class you're in, they want to catch up with each other. They want to start talking. Like that's at least how it was. The first 5 minutes is kind of like hours instead of the teachers, and so building anticipation right away just makes the day go a lot smoother. And then also, one of my partners mentioned that reflecting is important because, especially if it's out loud, because people see each other's point of views, catch certain things that they didn't catch themselves, and it also builds independence. Like that's what we all talked about.
Yeah, autonomy. Your whole goal, and that's as a parent too, your goal is to get kids to, even your own kids, give them roots, let them know who they are and what they know and all of that, and then send them free. You got to know what it is that they're leaving with. Yeah. Who else? Anybody else?
Our group kind of discussed the same thing Adriana was saying, that it kind of encapsulates everything you would need for a lesson plan, except when you're looking at like more traditional lesson plans, it's all very much teacher led, and this feels more student led, which we feel like would work better with older students, because with those younger students, at least in our experiences, they're a lot more willing to learn, and they're just happy that the teacher is talking to them and excited to be in class. And as your kids get older, they're developing their particular interests, and if you can't meet them in a way that makes them interested, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah. I think you're right on. And that even follows in alignment with parenting as well. So if you think about pre-kindergarten kids coming in, 4 years old, kindergarten, 5 years old, parents are often really connected to their kids at that point, right? So they come, they're house moms, and they make cupcakes and they send stuff in. And when you say, hey, I need pencils in class, they'll like send pencils. They come to PTA. By the time that they're in third and fourth grade, you start seeing that dip and it just starts falling apart. They're no longer involved in school in the same ways. Now, they might be involved at home doing homework. I'm certainly not saying that they're not involved, but they're not involved at the school place anymore as much. So you're not going to have as much parent involvement as you wish that you had. So just like with kids, you need the kids to be involved in deeper ways as they get older. We want them to be autonomous. We want them to be able to do these things on their own with less of us teaching whole class, more of us facilitating. So more of us actually doing the needs of the kids in the classroom. If you're doing most of the talk and you're exhausted at the end of the day, and it's not that good exhaustion where you feel like, whoa, we did so good today, like I am so exhausted, but you're walking out and you feel like this was an awful day. And you're going to have awful days. But when you start feeling like every day is awful, I don't know what to do, this is overwhelming, and you cry. First time I cried in my car, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm crying. I'm crying. I'm not a huge crier. And so to think that I was crying about something that I was actually in control of, which is my classroom, makes me sad for a lot of first-year teachers who feel that way, feel stuck. And you worked so hard. I mean, most of you are juniors and seniors now. You're ready to be done. You're going to be my colleague really quickly. That's why you read a textbook that's definitely for a reading scientist. It's for someone who knows. You do those things because when I come out into the schools, which is my favorite place to be, I'm missing it so much. And when I'm out in the schools and you see me, I'll surprise you. I won't even know that you're there. You don't know that I'm there. I'm walking down the hall and you're going to come out and be like, Dr. Wilson, like that. And it's like, I want to know that if I end up working next to you, that you know what you're doing. At least most of the time. Let's go 90%, you know what you're doing. The other part is just art, right? The science tells us it's important that kids are the ones leading this as they get older and older. Just like Elias says, Suzette was talking about, we need them to be leading these lessons. I can set it all up, but I can't make them learn it. So I need to create a space that gives them time to learn it and space to learn it and questions to, and that it's okay to question and that it's okay to fail. Right now in our school system, we use failures, failing a grade, failing the test, as huge indicators of knowledge. And I would say we should question that a little bit. I hope that this class is going, maybe that's not the only thing I should use to hold a kid back. Maybe there's stuff going on that it's not just something that I should use to say, oh, well, mom and dad are getting a divorce, or, coronavirus really hit this family hard. Those things are true. The problem is that when they come to school, what we want it to be is a safe space to learn and to think, so that time moves very quickly when you're in school and that they feel like, oh my gosh, class is over. Because I'll tell you, when students start saying, oh, miss, it's time to go to PE, but we just finished this one thing. You're like, because you feel like that's awesome. That's awesome, and that's what we want. Let's have one more person from some group. What do you think about it? It might not be the whole group idea, but what do you think about it? Hello. What are your thoughts? Would this change at any time? Should a lesson plan change, say the next time you do it, or maybe you decide, I've done anticipation. We've worked on the beginning of Sharks. They're ready to go. Maybe I don't need that anticipation anymore for this particular day. I don't have to do that. They're already driven to come in and get started on their projects. Do you have to have the lesson cycle in every lesson that you teach? I'm going to start calling on people. Jessica, what do you think?
Somehow I knew. So Elias, I was in a group with Elias and I think Victoria, Veronica.
Sure.
And so we had talked about how, and my point of, or my contribution to my group was the whole the ending is the best part, because I was talking to them about how so if I'm teaching something and maybe I'm 99% sure, or maybe 92% sure what I'm talking about is correct and factual, by the end of me teaching somebody, that's ingrained in my brain and it's going to stay there. And so if you are discussing with a fellow classmate, hey, this is what we've learned, and you're reiterating the lesson, that's just going to compact that into your brain. And then maybe your opinion of what went down is going to be different from your classmates. And then y'all can share point of views. And maybe Stacy didn't know what the hell was going on in class, but I did. And so she was like, oh, okay. And because maybe Stacy doesn't like to ask questions, and Stacy, doesn't like to talk out loud in class. So if her friend gives her some pointers about what was going on, she doesn't have to feel alienated or whatever, however she's feeling. And so she gets the lesson. It's just not from the teacher. She gets it from her friend.
I love that. And I'll tell you what a lot of those kids feel. We jump around these words a little bit, but the kids will come in and they'll say that they're stupid, that they're dumb, that they don't get it. Now, it's not that a teacher called them that. A teacher didn't call them that. A teacher never said that to them, but they decide that that's true because their ability to participate is diminished or their comprehension is lower, but they have things to contribute. It just often is not in a space where they get to. So Stacy's sitting in the class. She might be really well behaved. She's quiet. She doesn't say much. She doesn't answer questions or ask questions really. She does, she just sits kind of quietly. And, as a result, she looks like a good kid. And she probably is a good kid. But if you're looking at her grades, it can look like she's really struggling, but she's quiet. And so she falls to the wayside quite often because she's well behaved. Do you know, boys or girls, which ones are more often designated as special education or ADHD? Yep, Jessica says boys. Yeah, boys are way more likely to be put into special ed than girls. Boys are way more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than girls. And when you look at research for all of that, usually ADHD comes as a comorbid piece. So you have a dyslexic kid who's also ADHD. They kind of often go together. Boys are designated more often into special ed, and it almost always has to do with behavior, not actually the academics. They are put up to be looked at, and all the file starts and all that because they're behaving badly in class. And if you are a male, an African-American male, you are about 16 times more likely to be put into special education. You're also more likely to fail your STAR test than any other group. That's a problem. That means that we are not meeting the needs of the kids. A way to meet the needs of the kids is to have the kids be in control of a lot of things that they are working on and doing. Now, that's not saying you're not teaching skills. That's not saying that you're not doing mini lessons. That's not saying that you don't have book clubs going on. You are, of course, in charge of everything. Like, you're the facilitator. They're the ones living the life, right? They're the ones that have to come every day. Okay, so kind of moving on. Next thing I'm going to ask you guys to do, this will come together as we move into the vocabulary part. So these are some of the strategies that were mentioned in your book. Most of them were mentioned in your book. I'm going to put you into groups. And in your groups, what I want you to do is to take a look at the list, which I'll put over in the chat box. It'll just take me a couple minutes to do that, or a minute to do that. So you're going to look over what the topics are, what these skills are. These are skills in general. There are two that are not skills. This one here, learned helplessness and passive failure. They're not really skills for kids. They're things that develop in kids. They might help you to be a better teacher, but they're not going to help the kids so much. They actually hurt the children. So everything else is a skill and a knowledge that you should be able to use no matter what you end up teaching. Now, I don't even mean waiting until you're in your own classroom. I mean when you're like, what lesson do I teach? I've got my facilitator is coming out to watch me. So while you get the content from the teacher, you then can take these as a way to go about teaching them. So don't use KWL anymore. Pick some of these that you think might work for the grade level that you're in. Now, these are primarily for older readers according to your textbook. I'll tell you, I think that a lot of these would work in any grade level that you're in. Maybe kinder's a little different, but certainly any of our grade 1 through grade 12. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to get into the group that I send you in. You're going to ask, what is this? What is it? How would you describe it? How do you think it should be used? Is it subject specific? So do I only do it in social studies or do I only do it in ELAR? Then what grade levels could use it? Is it mostly younger grades? Is it something that we would see in older grades? Both? And then why do we care? Like, why would this be a good strategy? Why is Dr. Wilson saying it? Why did the book say it? Why is she picking this one out? And if you don't know what it is, you can, of course, always send a little Google and see what you can figure out. I'm going to throw you into your groups again. It's going to take me a second to jump into your group and tell you what group number you are. Like, I can see, actually, can you see my screen right now? Do you see the groups that are coming up? Can you see that it's like breakout session 1 is Michael, Namrimbo, and Suzette? Can y'all see that?
No.
No, you can't? Okay. All right. I'm going to throw you into breakout groups. It'll take me like 20 seconds. I'm going to pop into your group. I'm going to tell you, hey, you're group 1. Hey, you're group 2. And then the list is over here, was over there. I'll put that over on the side as well. So I'm going to put you in your group breakout rooms. You're going to have about 10 minutes to do this task so that you have written down on your paper or on your, if you're typing, that this is the second part of what I'm going to ask you to turn in. Moving you into breakout groups. Group 1. You're group 1.
Thank you.
Group 2. You're group 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Group 3. Group 3. Group 4. Okay, group 4.
Okay.
Okay, you're coming back. I've been lonely without you. Here we are. Sitting here by myself, recording my face. Love it when you guys join me. All right. Looks like most are back. Good. Okay. So this is sort of the second part of your notes. The first one was the first group exercise. Now this is your second group. As others kind of talk about each of these, it's definitely something you want to kind of take down if you like the strategy. If you don't really like the strategy, or certainly don't take it down just because I've told you to, take it down so that it comes from your ears and your auditory learning into your hands. So you got more of a physical learning. We know that learning is better when you're taking notes by hand in class, or that you are writing it as a way to learn, right? So when we write something down, we get better at it. Hence your Cornell notes, which I know you love. I know every week you are looking so forward to doing them. Some of you have such depth and complexity, you just love them, okay? All right, so let's start. Group 1. Somebody want to talk about anticipation guide, what it is?
Okay, we said that it was kind of like an activity with questions about a specific topic that would be presented.
Mm-hmm.
And then for how it should be used, we put before introducing a text or a topic. And then for what grade levels, we were saying that like your younger students, to get them kind of engaged in the text beforehand. And then as for why we should care about the term, because it helps students build curiosity for the topic, so it can be a really good tool to use.
Yeah, and it can be really easy. I mean, I think probably if you looked them up, they have huge guides that can go, worksheet kind of things where they write down things, and you can totally use those. But just like we saw earlier when you were in your group, anticipation needs to be the beginning of almost every lesson you start. Like, why are we doing it? Like, am I interested in it? Like, when you're interested, the kids will follow. They will. Doesn't matter what it is that's going on. They will follow you if you are having a great time talking to them about it. So it might be like, hey, yesterday, remember we had that question about the great white shark? We didn't answer it. So we still have that question on. So today we're going to try to get to that question about why we can't have a great white shark at SeaWorld. Could I even use a question like that if we were reading Romeo and Juliet? Like, could I pose a question like, why don't we have sharks at SeaWorld? Guys, I was just wondering about that. I was thinking about that while you guys were passing in the passing period. Now you came in here. I just want to tell you, I do not know. I'm going to come back to that. Maybe we can research that when we come back tomorrow. You totally can use anticipation anywhere. You really can. We want to grab onto that internal want of the kid to know an answer to something. That's what school was supposed to be about when it began. It was about teaching kids to read and to do mathematics so they could live in the world better. And that's what I would say. I don't think that that's changed that much. We're much better teachers than they were in the early 1900s, don't get me wrong. And we're serving all kids. In the United States, it's one of the things that we do. All kids, doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter where you've been to, it doesn't matter who your parents are, what religion, what language, what space, we will educate you. Now we say that, and then our kids sometimes can take advantage of that, and they sort of take over a classroom with behavior. Bad behavior almost always, unless there's some sort of mental illness going on, almost always has to do with what's happening in the class. And you can be in control of that, I promise you. Great. I do think you can use it with the older ones. Don't worry the word guide. Just think anticipation. Building anticipation for what's going to happen today is a good thing, especially if you're having behavior problems in your class. All right, what about brainstorming or paired brainstorming? Group 1.
Brainstorming, I thought it would be the way to organize your idea or your thought before you start writing, which gives you a lot of time to change or to irritate. I don't know. I just think like it's organizing your idea before when you're writing. Or you can also, I don't know, you give me a correction if I'm wrong. I feel like, is it like you can call it like a free writing?
Sure. That's not wrong at all.
Yeah. I feel like it could be like a free writing. I don't know.
Sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I think I know you're going to carry on in your little question, so I'll let you keep talking, and then I'll jump in. But yeah, absolutely, it could be.
No, you can go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think She's exactly right. It can be in all of the subject areas. I think we hear it most in writing, whether it's free writing, whether it's brainstorming topics, that the kids are going to write about. That's quite often where we hear brainstorming. I do want to say, I think that it can go in all the subjects. Let's brainstorm all the things we know about the ocean. It's wet, there's salt, there's sharks, there's hammerhead sharks, there's great white sharks, there's dogs have to wear a life vest, I don't know, whatever the kids come up with. That allows kids to sort of bring up that knowledge that they have. That's their prior knowledge. Remember, that's what they're coming to the task with. And so if you take a look at what their brainstorming is, you often can find out a lot about the kid and what they do know. Yeah, so keep going. Remember?
Yeah, I think it's so why it's so important. It can give the teacher the time to see and also give the feedback, and also the kids can be also able to share with the class if they have to share before, and all that. It gives everyone, the teacher and the student, the opportunity to make some correction.
Beautifully said. Yeah, I mean, it allows us so much knowledge about the kids and to correct misknowledge as well. Misknowledge or misappropriated knowledge is the hardest to change. So when a kid comes into your class and they think they already know something to be true, it's often the hardest to get kids to believe that it's different. So let me give you an example. Kids have been taught that the moon is made of cheese. Right? So they read good night, moon, but the moon is made of cheese. And they come to your class and they're in kindergarten. And now you're talking about phases of the moon and what the moon's made of, and that it's rocks and then it follows the earth. And kids are like, but it's made of cheese. If a kid thinks it's made of cheese, it takes a lot of time to try to get them to realize that it's not made of cheese. If they believe that plants are not edible, you do not eat plants. You do not eat plants. And then you can say, actually, if we talk about, there are lots of plants that we eat. Did you know you can even eat flowers? Chrysanthemums and roses actually are really good in a salad. They go, no, miss, they're toxic. So it's a lot harder sometimes to catch on to what their misnomers are, their little misinformation is. That's why brainstorming can be great, because sometimes they come up with an idea like the moon is made of cheese, and you wonder, okay, is it they believe that, or that's just a fun sort of fiction story that they've learned? So yeah, I think you can use it also in those ways. Brainstorming often is used in writing as topics because we don't want our kids to be like, I don't know what to write about. And that's what they say all the time. Well, good, we're going to brainstorm some more so that you know what to write about. You get choice. And so we care about it because it's a time for the kids to share what they know without judgment while they're doing the brainstorming. Right? We want them to write down as many things as they can come up with without judgment to begin with. Then they can go in and start pulling out things that they don't want or that they don't agree with, or that maybe their partner in their paired brainstorming, when they share with each other, is like, remember the moon is not made of cheese. Maybe your mom said that, but it's not. It's made of rock. Miss Wilson just said the name of rock. And then, maybe it's like, well, maybe it's not made of cheese. It doesn't make sense it would be made of cheese up there. So that's exactly what we want. So it can be both of those things. Yeah, great. Thank you. How about student-driven topics? What is that?
So we got a little chatty about brainstorming, so we didn't really get to it. But would it be something akin to student-centered learning?
Yep.
Where kids are coming up more than any, kind of what they want to learn, but not necessarily what they want to learn. Obviously, they're going by the structure you're providing, but they're also it's more student-driven than teacher-driven, right?
Got it. Yep. It is what it sounds like. In reading, guys, this is even true when you take your exams as you get ready for those. Vocabulary in reading is what you think it is. We don't come up with weird things that, it's called one thing and then it's another. Anytime you see the word phono for phonics or phonemic awareness or phonological, phono only and always has to do with sound. Always. So if you see a vocabulary word that you don't know when you're in your ELAR exam and it has P-H-O-N or P-H-O-N-O, phono, or phon, F-P-H-O-N, it's going to have something to do with sound. If you see something that says morpho, M-O-R-O, or P-H-O, those are always going to have something to do with meaning. Grapheme or grapho is always going to have something to do with written. Okay, even graphite, all of those. Anytime you see those, they're always going to be the same. That's here. If you don't know what something is, assume it's the easiest thing. That's usually what it is. So student-driven topics is exactly that. Students drive the topics that you're teaching in class. They don't drive the skills. You have to choose the skills. You know the teaks. You know what they're supposed to know about. You know, hey, this week we're learning about fiction and nonfiction. We're learning about summarizing. We're learning about character traits. You know what it is, the skill that they need to do. But they can drive the topic, say the type of reading you're doing, the type of teaching that you're doing, the book. They were interested in sharks, so you go to the library and you check out a shark book. You're sharing the book. You're looking at sharks, but we're actually learning about summarizing. So you're still driving the skill, because you're the only one that knows the skill. They don't know the skill. So you're the one that drives the skills. They drive what it is that the topic is. All right, what about concept map? Group 2.
We well, we kind of did this wrong because we only talked about concept map. We didn't talk about the two, but we described it as a visual representation of information that can be represented in a graphic organizer, T-charts, web maps, flowcharts. And we said that it can be used for almost any period of a lesson. Like it can be used as an opener, it can be used in the middle of the lesson, or it could even be used like as an exit ticket. And that it can be utilized for almost all subjects, like any type of subject, science, social studies, math, and like that. Like it's pretty universal. And as well for grade levels, like we think that almost every grade level from 1st to 12th could either learn how to use a concept map or already has the knowledge to do one.
Yeah, all grade levels. With the little ones, they even do cut and paste. So it's like the life cycle of a butterfly, and they cut it around, right? So the simplest ones are ones that look kind of like a web. They usually have a central word or topic, and then they've got all the little pieces sticking out. Mm-hmm. So all kids can do them, even in your classroom. So when you have kids that are at a low level and kids that are at high level, they're going to look different, but everybody's doing webs. So your high level kid might be doing dogs in the center, and they've got shedding dogs, and then they've got non-shedding dogs, and then they've got... And your low kid just has dogs, and they're writing ears, tail, fuzzy, right? So it actually allows for differentiation really nicely. I love concept maps, hint, hint, for exams. I especially love them teaching because the kids actually get into it. They can draw, they can write, they can share what they know, what they remember in a map. And that's actually how it sort of sits in our brain. It sits like these little concepts that are carried inside of our synapses and our dendrite connections. So, our brain is mapped. And so when I say dog, you can jump to what a dog is immediately. Now, you might not be thinking poodle. You might be thinking German Shepherd. Or you might be thinking, I don't know, my husband. Right? So you can think of any way. The older you are, the more concepts you have around those terms. When you're little, you just think of the dog you have or that the neighbor has. It's why little kids have a lot of fears around certain things, and it's because if they don't know really what it is or they've only seen the scary kind, then they can be fearful about it, right? So if all they know is Rottweilers and German Shepherds over on the west side and that they jump at them and pit bulls, then that's what they're going to feel like dogs are, even if they're cute and cuddly. And, we want to provide that kind of experience for them. So, yeah. All right. So how about a dual entry diary? And I know group 2 said they didn't quite get to that. So I'm going to talk about dual entry diary. Dual entry diary is kind of like your Cornell notes, guys. It's basically where either you, as the student, or the teacher, so it can be either one, depending on the age of the kids, they write concepts or questions that they have as they're reading the text. And then they go about responding to those questions as they go about reading the text. So they can have questions about what is a great white shark? Where do they live? And then they go about answering those questions in the text that they're reading. So if they're all reading things about the Alamo, because you're teaching the Alamo in 4th grade Texas history, and you've come up with some questions down the left side, then they can respond, either responding on their own thoughts about it, like, why do you think that Jim Bowie carried a knife? He's known for his knife, the Bowie knife. So why did he carry a knife? Or you can actually have them utilizing the book to find those answers when you're wanting explicit book connection, right? So you might have that. You can also have it where the kid writes a journal on kind of the left side, and then you as the teacher can write comments to what they've said. So on the right side, you might say, oh my gosh, Thank you, Natalie. Exactly, right on. So you can actually make comments. You might even say, actually, look at page 76. 76 says that Jim Bowie carried the knife because his father gave him that knife. It became popular later on. Nothing, not about a grade, just about you commenting. So that's what that dual entry is. It's about connecting with text and sharing what I know or what I've learned. It means usually that they've got deeper learning over time. It's what you'll see. They're better able to answer questions on a test. They're better able to share in the class, in the group, rather than just reading and answering chapter questions at the end. Or like a lot of you probably did, I mean, I know I did, a lot of vocabulary where you write the word and you underline it, and then you then you go and you look it up in the glossary, or you look in the book and you write it down, and you don't remember any of it. Guys, I swear, it's the funniest thing to me. You know, when I was in college, so my family never went on vacation anywhere or did any of that. So, but I had been in Texas history. You take Texas history a million times. You know, if you're a Texan, you take it when you're in kindergarten, let's say, and you make blue bonnets made of popcorn, right? And then you learn that that's the flower, and you learn the state and what it's shaped like. It's got this cool shape. And then in 4th grade, you take it again. In 7th grade, you take it again. In high school, you take it again. And then you take it often again in college. And if I were to tell you, okay, tell me everything you know about the Alamo, you would be like, they sell Rospas out front. It is downtown. There are people there. Jim Bowie was there. You sound like a 4th grader, and yet you've had it literally 6 times, the same thing, and you're like, it happened in, yeah, because you don't know the date. You don't even know. You don't know when it happened. You're like, you can get your pictures taken across the street, and there's the Great Escape, and it used to be bigger. Like when I first saw it in college, I'd never. I'm from North Texas in the kind of farm area, and so when I came down to UT, we played in the band. I was in the band at UT, my undergraduate, and we played at the Fiesta Flambeau Parade, right? So my first time ever being in San Antonio. So I said, I want to see the Alamo, because you know every Texas history book has that Alamo on the front of it, and it's like they've got the lights in the back, and it's got the light show. I'm like, I want to see the Alamo. I've learned about, I want to see the Alamo. Now, mind you, I'm like 20 years old. Like, I want to see the Alamo. So we're marching past the Alamo, and my friend goes, hey, Jen, there it is. And I was like, no, that's a Mexican restaurant. She's like, no, that's like the Alamo, man. I was like, no, I don't think so. Because in my mind, the Alamo is this huge thing because I've spent so much of my life learning about it. I've taken, 6 classes on it by this point. I should, 6 years of Texas history. And it looked like a restaurant, guys. Like, we shouldn't have kids that are 20 years old thinking that it looks like that. And we shouldn't have you, who've lived here all your life, going, Jim Bowie was there. Remember the Alamo. Like, you have these strange little pieces. What we want is it to grab onto you. And that's why a dual entry diary can be really important for that. Once you write it, you do know more about it. You'll feel pretty good when you hit your final exam. Those of you that really did work on your Cornell notes, you will feel proud of yourselves. I promise you. Okay, 5-minute lessons. This is sort of the idea of mini lessons. So taking only 5 to 15 minutes, 5 to 15, in order to teach. Everything else should be the kids doing it. They need to be doing something. You can facilitate, you can have small groups, you can even be walking around, but your lesson should only take 5 to 15 minutes. With that being said, if you're taking longer than that, just realize that for every 5 minutes longer you take, you lose approximately half. We're not capable of 3 hours of nonstop learning, which is what, a lot of college classes are, 3 hours. It's too much. We get so overwhelmed that we can't remember everything. And imagine if you're 10, so just imagine that it's probably going to behoove your lesson to have it be somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes. If you need to come back and do it again, do it again. Pull them back. Say, hey guys, I'm noticing we're having some issues here. Let's do this again. Let's talk about this again. But ultimately, you might only have 2 or 3 that are still struggling with it. Pull them onto a table. Say, hey, let's do this again. You're perfectly able to amend how the lesson works based on what you're seeing with the kids. All right, group 3, tiered vocabulary, which is our last thing. I'm going to show you some stuff about that today. Group 3.
So I'm going to take responsibility for this because I downloaded the PowerPoint and I was like, oh, I don't see the thing that she pulled up anymore. In group 3 on there, it just said 5-minute lesson. So tell me why we talked about 5-minute lesson the entire time. So I realized that we have messed up. Like, I was like, oh shoot. Houston, we got a problem. Yeah. I was like, okay, let me go look this up real quick. So tier 1. So I became a professional in like this amount of time.
I love it. All right, tell me what you've learned, expert.
So tier 1 is like everyday language that they use in and out. You got your sight words, all that good jazz. Tier 2 is academic vocabulary that they like they need to learn, but they're actively using it. And then tier 3 is like domain specific academic vocabulary. And they all learn it like in, for different things. So like science would be a tier 3, like any kind of like, stuff like that.
Man,
it would be tier 3. It's going to be used across the grade levels, I believe, but mostly older kids. I mean, they're going to be learning the harder tier 2 and 3, vocabulary words as they get older. But oh, look at that! I didn't even have to Google it, but I did.
I'm glad you did. That's that kind. Don't you wish that kids in your class, if they didn't know something, would Google it? Like I used to say to all if you were in a class with me, like face to face, I would absolutely not tell you to put your phones away. I would ask that if you are using your phone or you are using your computer and you don't know something that I'm talking about, Google it. We have access like this. Why would we not expect kids to be doing that? We don't want them doing Facebook, but we do want them to be like, tiers. What is a tier?
Well, like it's crazy to me, and I know it's just the generation. Like because we grew up like with the internet and all that jazz. Like that's our first thought is, oh, I don't know something. Let me go ask Google. Where back in my parents' day, it was like, oh, I don't know something. Let me ask my dad or let me ask my mom or whatever. And when I was like a kid, that worked too. But as I got older, like I fell on Google for literally everything. Oh God, I don't know how many teaspoons are in a tablespoon. Like let me Google it. So
like directions. Like imagine if you couldn't use your maps app anymore. Like you were still using. So it's like, okay, I need to get to 1780.
Actually lost.
Right? I used to deliver flowers. My mom was a florist, so I used to have to deliver flowers when I was young. So I used to have to deliver flowers, and of course Valentine's Day just passed. It was like, oh my gosh, I would be delivering roses all over the place, and it was like I had to use a map, like an actual it's called Mapsco. It was a book of maps, and you would look up the address and you'd figure out how you're supposed to get there. I would never do that now, nor would I expect kids to do that. And anyway, so yeah, I'm actually going to stop everybody here. We didn't quite finish everything. We didn't quite finish this. But this is actually where we were going to talk about specifically today, and Jessica is bringing it up, so I'm just going to kind of end. I know we're kind of right a little past time, so thank you for those of you that are holding in with me. This tiered vocabulary system is actually one of the most important things that you, no matter what subject you're teaching, should recognize. Because teaching vocabulary where they write down the word and underline it and then go look it up is not going to be helpful for most of our kids that are under the age of about 15. Because under the age of 15, we're still developmentally not able to remember mass amounts of information on one specific topic. So we get better at it. So what happens is when we're little, we have these little, let's say a little knowing about a dog in our head. So everything new starts adding to that. And our head gets a little bit bigger and the little synapses start, moving and you start connecting everything. And that's really great. And when we get older, as that comes together, so this synapse about dogs and this synapse about husbands, they come together. And that's great because now I have all this knowledge. Whereas when we're little, it's like, no, the only dog is my dog. That's the dog, is my dog. And so when they get older, they can hold on to much more information because their brain is actually lit up differently than it was when they were born. Okay, so just really quickly, this tiered vocabulary system starts with this tier 1, exactly like Jessica said. These are words that are used in our everyday conversation. Easy words, words that you do not need to teach to kids. They know the word recess. You do not need to teach it to them. You can show them how to spell it, but you don't need to teach it to them. They know what it means. Kids as 3 years old will know what it means when you say recess. If a kid understands the word, then that's our tier 1, no matter what level it is, right? So kindergarten are going to they're going to know less words. So we might do some more teaching there than we will. Those words will no longer be tier 1 when they get to kindergarten or first grade. All right. Tier 2 is like our instructional tier. This is the tier where we spend most of our time. That's kind of like that 91 to 95%-ish thing. So in there, that's where you're spending your time. They're high frequency words, words that kids are going to see over and over again. And so I get a lot of bang for my buck, meaning that if I teach the word, they're then going to actually be smarter in other subject areas too. So if I teach the word summary, let's say I teach you about summary and we're reading a story about Amelia Earhart and we talk about summary and we're, okay, then when they go over to science, I'm like, okay guys, we're going to summarize what we just learned. And then when I'm in social studies, it's like, all right, we need to summarize this stuff about the Alamo. And I can use that word in lots of subject areas to enhance what they know and are able to do. So that's where you spend most of your time as a teacher, is in tier 2. You're going to sprinkle, I like to think of it as little candles. We're going to sprinkle a little bit of special words, those tier 3 words that are specialized for that content area, meaning that you won't see them anywhere else, but you're going to see them as you take science over time. So the word like a tier 3 word is going to be a word that most kids don't know, but they might see it in other biology classes or other science classes. Very specific though. So for example, you might have the word auger. You're like, what is auger? You don't even remember. And that's because it's a very tier 3 word. You're only going to get it if you studied in biology when you use a petri dish, the little plastic dishes. The jelly that's down in the bottom that holds on to the bacteria or your hand swipe or whatever you're trying to grow or look at, that's agar. It's down in the bottom of a petri dish. You're not going to use that anywhere else. So I can teach it to the kids, but I don't get anything much out of it because they're not going to see it again. Whereas if I pick a tier 3 word like temperature, let's say, for little kiddos, we say temperature, and that's a high frequency. They're going to see it somewhere else, but probably only when they're in science or only when they're in mathematics. So we spend most of our time in tier 2. That's your instructional level. Okay, and then tier 3 is going to be very specific. So you might have gotten all the way to until you took EDRG 3315 or 14, depending on when you were taking it, and you never heard about phonology, phonograms, you didn't learn about graphemes, you were like, I never heard of this stuff before. Well, you learned to read, and you didn't remember what they are? Well, that's because they're tier 3 words. They're words that primarily teachers are going to know. We're going to know it, but if you go over and ask a major in English, just random English literature, do you know what a grapheme is? They would say no. They have no idea, but they're an English major. See, we're way smarter than all those majors. We have to know everything. All right, guys. So those of you that are here, this is your extra credit. It's okay for you to stop after tier vocabulary. Group 4, you should have these last ones. I'll touch on these learned help. I'll ask the people that are in group 3 to touch on learned helplessness and passive failure next time. So if you were in group 3 now, just remember, hey, I was in group 3 last week. And in group 4, I was in group 4 last week. And so inside of, you got a message, I'm sure, and it kind of freaked you out because I copied and pasted without reading. And I had said, this is what you're going to turn in class. And some of you are like, I don't have class till Wednesday. Like, this is what you're turning in, is your note page, right? So just those few little notes that you took right now, it's inside of the chapter 8 folder. And you can just take a picture of it, or you can, if you wrote it up, you can type it up, but you don't have to. You can literally take a picture of it and upload it, and that's your extra credit point for today, is to have at least 3 of these words described, all right? At least your 3, or 3 other people if you like them. All right, so I will see you guys next week. Next week we have class. We're going to finish up with affect, specifically how do we get kids interested and what are you guys interested in? We're going to talk about that. And then the following week we'll be off. I'm kind of thinking of giving you an actual spring break week where I don't even have anything due for you. I just let you kind of work on your stuff. I don't know. Stay in touch with me on email. I might even decide to do that because of your project next week. I'll decide. I'll think of it. Do you have anything to ask? Would it be nice to have a week where I'm not meeting with you and you don't have homework except for your project? Some of you are like, I don't want to say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would love
yes,
it
yeah.
for project.
Extend the project.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I will. I think you're right, Nurbo. I think you're right, Carrie. Let's go with that. All right. I'm going to send out an email tomorrow to kind of describe that. And that way you can have a little bit of time to work on your project, which is due coming up. And so I'll send it out to you guys. I'll extend it so that you're not doing all these extra weeks. So chill on that, work on your project. So chapter 8, do that. Don't move on. I'm not going to put anything else new up there. And I'll be in touch. So check your email. All right. See you guys later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.